who is video podcasting for? Is it content creators? Is it businesses?
People that want to get more out of what they put in. At a very high level, a successful podcast is building trust with your audience. There's plenty of reasons why people fail, but the number one reason is they have improper expectations, and so they give up when they do not hit those numbers right away. Everyone looks at the gangsters in the space and is like, well, I gotta do a video podcast, upload 2 reels a day. Just word vomiting around something worked really well in 2015. It does not work now. People have higher expectations on how you're going to and what order you're going to convey this information. I wouldn't think of everything orbiting around the podcast. I think of the podcast as another thing orbiting around your brand. We talked a lot about things that you want to pair yourself with. Yeah. We haven't talked at all about what you shouldn't pair yourself with.
Ooh,
and it's just as important.
Yeah. What are the things you do to grow your brand? Join me as we take a look at how the best in the business build authority and create true fans through video podcasting. I'm Josh Lewis, and this is Grow Your Podcast, produced by the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. All right, so today we're going to be talking with Caleb Ralston. He has worked with people like Gary Vaynerchuk. He has worked with Alex and Leila Hormozi, and now he is working with other brands and agencies with his own brand and business. And the thing I'm really excited for you all to hear from our conversation is that while Caleb is not like the foremost podcast expert, he's worked with the best in the business, and he is an expert in branding. He is an expert in content creation. And so I'm excited for you to hear this conversation. We do talk about what do the best in the business do, but I also really press him on what are the transferable principles that somebody who has 0 followers can actually implement today. Well, I basically want to start with sort of beginning with the end in mind. And which is something that I feel like you talk about a lot. But like, how would you define or paint a picture of what a successful podcast looks like?
I think ultimately, at a very high level, a successful podcast is building trust with your audience. More than likely, I'm assuming people listening have some sort of offer, something that they're offering, service, a good, whatever. And I think what you can develop with a podcast, maybe a little different than some of the other platforms, is a level of depth and trust. And I'll use a different word than I've ever really used actually in talking about this: proximity. I think that you can get a closer proximity with your audience via a podcast. I will tell you, this is very anecdotal, but me as a consumer, if I look at who I consume via podcast versus who I consume via YouTube, Instagram, whatever, right? So podcast long form, YouTube long form, Instagram short form, I feel closest with the podcasters. And I'm literally realizing this right now as I'm saying this, but it's 100% true. There are 3 shows that I can think of, one of them that I've been listening to since I was in high school. And I feel like I know the dude super well, right?
Yeah.
I don't really have a YouTuber where I feel that with, and I don't think that I can think of an Instagram influencer or creator or whatever we want to call them that I have that same closeness with. And I think it's for a lot of different reasons. And so what I'm about to say, I want to qualify is me just verbally processing here for a second. But
love it.
What I'm going to do is share kind of my personal experience, because I don't podcast. Like, I don't have a podcast yet. We're working on that. That'll come out eventually. But
Nice.
I consume a lot. Actually, the majority of my content consumption is podcasting. And something I'm literally thinking of right now is even the fact that I fall asleep to these characters. I literally will play the podcast as I'm falling asleep. There's not a YouTuber, Instagrammer, nothing that comes that close to my life and my livelihood, right? Wow. In the morning when I'm getting ready, when I'm showering, brushing my teeth, all that shit, I'm listening to, usually the Daily or something like that, or Up First. But I'm listening to a podcast. So I think it's ultimately all I'm doing right now is rambling on about a bunch of different versions of establishing trust.
I love that. I think, man, That's cool though. You said it's a different word that proximity is a different word than you've ever used, and that's a different word than I've heard uh, to describe trust and like how that functions. Because yeah, you're right that you let people in specific parts of your day for a long period of time. Like that's a
Yeah.
commitment. So
Mhm.
I love that. So to a successful podcast is a show that establishes trust. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I just think that's content in general, right? Whether
Yes.
you're educational or entertainment, that is what you're trying to do, is just
Yeah.
scale trust.
Yeah. I love that. So I'm curious from your perspective, and maybe this isn't podcasting, maybe this could also be content in general. Um, but like, what keeps people from being successful at creating a podcast or video content? Like, what are those things that keeps people back from that?
You know what I just realized, Josh? This is such perfect timing. My mom just called me 2 weeks ago and was like, "This ChatGPT thing is insane. I've been going back and forth with it, and I've decided I'm gonna make a podcast." And yeah, crazy, like, so wild. As a side note, my mom's a gangster, and the fact that she still is willing to, like, embrace ChatGPT is so cool.
That's
Um,
amazing.
but the timing's perfect. The number one thing that I told her, and it's what I would tell anybody, and I'm sure you're gonna resonate with this. There's plenty of reasons why people fail, but the
Yeah.
number one reason is they have improper expectations, and so they give up when they do not hit those numbers right away. They
Yeah.
think, "I'm gonna post this thing, and all of these people are gonna listen and love it. They're gonna go to my website and get my lead magnets. They're gonna opt in. My business is gonna explode." And you know better than anyone that out of all of the platforms, podcast is the one that you have the least amount of discoverability organically with, right?
Yep.
Like, it is not like TikTok where you can just first video you upload, if it's good, it'll hit. You do not have that as of July 8th, 12:23 PM, 2025.
Right.
You don't have that in podcasting. Now,
Mhm.
there are things that are shifting. Spotify
Yep.
is just, fucking it up for all the OG
Exactly.
podcasters and pissing off a lot of people. I think a lot of it's good. Some of it's like interesting,
Yeah.
but yeah, I would say that, and again, this applies, I think, to anything in life. Like,
Mm.
I'm currently on the journey of trying to get back in shape and start lifting again. And like, I used to compete in powerlifting back in high school. If I went into the gym day one thinking I was going to deadlift what I did back when I was lifting all the time, well, I'd give up very quickly and probably break my back. Like, it would just not be good. And I
Right.
think that with podcasting, we see, and I know there was a stat floating around, I can't remember what it was, of, like, how many shows there are out there, and then how many shows make it to, like, episode, like, 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
And yes, that exists, but more people are not aware of that, and more people are aware of, the Rogans, the Bartletts, the Mel Robbins, and all of
Yep.
this stuff. And what they fail to realize is Mel Robbins, for example, I love her podcast, phenomenal.
Yeah.
She's been doing this thing for fucking ever, and for
Right.
many years with very little traction, very
Mhm.
little, right? I mean, Rogan's first episodes, they were drunk and just joking around, like,
Right.
they didn't take it seriously, and so I think that the number one thing that I would advise people to do is, if you're gonna embark on releasing a podcast, let's say that, it's July 8th when we're recording this, no idea when it'll come out. Let's say August 1st, you're gonna start. I would not expect to have more than 5 listeners in the first year.
Yep. And one
You
is
might
your
get
mom.
surprised. Right, right, exactly, yeah. Like, so I definitely believe that we look too much at the people that are big in this,
Yeah.
and then we assume that we're going to get those results, and it's like, maybe if you do it for fucking 7 or 8 years and
Mm.
then it pops, right? Like,
Yep.
Mel did not pop for a very long time. The last, like, 2 or 3 years, she's really hit. I'd say
Yeah.
the last, like, 2 years, I would say, has been, like, wild. But if you look, there's years worth of podcasts before that. So, I believe in having proper expectations.
Speaking of expectations, so you have worked with Gary V. You were really responsible and instrumental with Alex and Leila Hormozi. I kind of want to just speak to the people who they are saying, I'm not sure I can listen to this guy because, he's worked with the top dogs, but they already have a big following and all these different things. I also have been there too, where I've
Yes.
heard these social media people who are that, they work one place, they stop working there, start their own podcast, and they
Uh-huh.
freaking blow up. Like what are some of those things that these people do that are transferable to the day ones, right? Like, you know what I'm saying?
I'm going to give you something that I think it could be viewed as discouraging,
Okay,
but I want it to be an optimistic frame.
love it.
No matter how hard I try, I am not going to be an NBA athlete. There's no amount of hard work in the world that
Yeah.
would cause me to be an NBA athlete. I'm tall, so
Yep.
I have that advantage. I'm 6'7", like, okay. But I am not athletically gifted in any way, shape, or form. I can barely jump over a phone book. Like, and I look at podcasting or content creation, and I think people apply a wildly different view to it. They understand that, like, in business, there are just individuals that's like, yes, they've worked really hard, but they also, there was like just something there that
Mm,
they have inherently. With athletes, yes, they work really hard, but the best athletes in the world are the ones that work really hard and have a natural gift, right?
yep.
Like,
Yep.
right. And so one thing I want to say is at the top level for me, it's like, okay,
Mm,
there, like there is a level that I can reach for sure, but beyond my hard work, I don't know. I don't know what my natural talent can fill in or whatever. So
yep.
that's the biggest thing is I actually don't like, especially in the early stages, really looking at those characters or modeling after them. I think that's the
Mm,
wrong move. And what I'm trying to do is build my own shit now to kind of show, like, I don't have massive budgets. I don't
yeah.
have $1 million a year to spend on content, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a massive team. Yes, I do have a content director in Trevor, but like we only have one person making the content, right?
Yeah.
And so back to expectations, like I would communicate and articulate to people that they just need to have the proper expectations. So for me, we're not aiming for one YouTube video a week. We're trying to get one out a month, right?
Mm,
That's the goal right now, right?
yep.
And so knowing that, I don't expect to get 1 million followers in our first year. I don't,
Right.
right? And so a lot of questions you ask will probably come back to like expectation management, but a couple of things that are transferable. One, no matter what, if you put out content for 6 months, you are gonna have some pieces, so on a podcast, you're gonna have some episodes that do a little bit better than the others.
Yeah.
I'm talking, you might have every episode averages around 13 downloads, 13 listens, depending on what platform you're using and how they're defining metrics these days.
Right.
Uh, and then you might have one that gets 52.
Mm,
That is an indicator that something there worked. Okay. And after 6 months, you might have a couple of those. So then it's figuring out, okay, what are the things that I did in each of these top performers? That is now my list of things that I include in every episode moving forward. What I'm
mm,
explaining to you is understanding what is working and doubling down on that. That is
yep.
something that anybody at any level can do. And that is going to be your best strategy. Fuck all of the bullshit tactics that all these like podcast gurus are talking about on TikTok in the fucking basement where they're regurgitating something they heard from somebody else on a podcast 6 years ago. Like, if you literally just post shit and you look at how it did and you do less of the stuff that didn't work and more of the stuff that did, you will grow. Now, it might not be at the same rate as some of these people that you look up to, but you will fucking grow.
Mm,
That applies to everything, by the way. Uh, health, business, all. But
yeah.
anyways, like that's something that I would highly recommend. The other thing is always thinking, if we're talking education for a second, forget entertainment for a moment,
Yeah.
purely education. If you frame every episode that you make, the entire goal is just to get the viewer to do something different on the other end of consuming it. And so then that's your North Star. So everything you do, everything you communicate, everything you put in and leave out ladders up to, I want to make it easier for them to change what they do. You will make content that the audience deems as valuable. What is value? It's useful. It's content that they can immediately apply in their life. And if you do that over and over and over, the cool thing is they'll start getting results. And then they start to associate you with the results they're getting. And so their trust in you goes up. And then if you have an offer, or if you're wanting them to subscribe, like I would recommend try not to right hook your audience in the beginning. Maybe your right hook is getting them to subscribe or leave a review. Well, they're more likely to do that after they associate you with that value that they get and trust you more. And so those would be, I mean, there's many things, but those would be two big ones that I would say, like, if you take those two things and you sprint literally with just that for the next 12 months, you'll be in a really good spot.
Are you looking for a place that you can create the content that helps market your brand? Or are you somebody who just needs a space that they can record a podcast, record talking head social content? You want to create a webinar, a course, or other content like that? Take a look at the Cincinnati Podcast Studio. We're a space built just for creators like you. Our studio here in downtown Cincinnati, located right next to all the hot restaurants in OTR, is set and ready for you. We can have up to 4 people in our studio. You can record long form, short form content. It looks awesome. The lights change colors. I mean, even there, hi, in the background. What's up there, guys? We have all the technical amenities to try and help you succeed at creating high quality content. We work on everything from subscriptions to create your own show. We do day rentals so you can create massive volumes of content and we'll just hand you all the footage. And we can even do things like limited time series where you can come in, record a bunch of episodes at one go, and then have that ready for a show to market your brand or your business. So whether you're an entrepreneur, a brand, or an author who's looking to market themselves with high quality video content, check out our website at cincinnatipodcaststudio.com and schedule a tour today.
I was really hoping you were going to talk about the iteration piece specifically, like making sure that you review, evaluate, and just really double down on the things, because that's something I've been learning from you in interviews you've done and different things that I really appreciate, and something I'm trying to like put into practice with this podcast too. So that's huge.
I love that. I'm so glad. And like, I'll hit this a little further too, because it's just something that, I'm going to sound like an asshole here, but it shocks me every time I come across this, but I come across it more often than I don't, which is the amount of people that are posting shit, podcast episodes, promos on Instagram for their podcast, and they're not fucking working, but they just keep posting it. Like one of the things when I get on discovery calls that I tell people is like, one of the things that we'll help you do is we're going to come in and evaluate what's working that you should continue doing. But more importantly, what are you posting that we all know doesn't work, but you're still fucking posting it for whatever reason?
Yeah.
Like, why? Right?
Yes.
Like for all of the podcasters listening, I'm calling you out. It's your fucking shitty ass promos that you put on Instagram to promote a fucking episode that nobody engages with, nobody gives a shit about, and you're wasting a time slot, a posting slot. Like it is such a waste. Like, and I can say this because I've done it. I had a 2-month period where we were posting on a previous team that I was on. We were posting podcast promos that fucking sucked and nobody engaged with. And then one day my lead shorts editor was like, yo, dog, these are not doing well. Like we either need to just not post these because it's hurting our overall impressions because every week we're taking up a time slot with this, or we need to get way more creative with it. And if you want, I can hit on what I think a good promo is. Okay,
That'd
cool.
be awesome. That'd be super great.
So Diary of a CEO murdered it with their trailers, right? And now everybody copies that. And that works so well for them. And other shows do it really well. But I do believe that there is a certain point where you hit critical mass, where everybody's doing something and it's no longer as effective. Maybe for the OG person who created it. I mean, I think that, I believe his name's Tyler over there. The editor is fucking phenomenal. And they just make the coolest things. But like, I think the best version of a promotional piece for anything, but let's say in the context of podcasts, is give value. Like The worst thing that I see is like somebody starting to tease a nugget and then they cut it off. And it's like the thinking, the psychology or the assumed psychology behind it is like, well, now they're hooked and they need to know. But that has to be a very, very compelling moment in
Mm,
the middle of somebody's busy day where they have, their partner, their kids, their friends, the dog, neighbors, dinner tonight, notifications on their phone, DM comes in, their favorite influencer is the next one as they're scrolling. Like you're competing with so many different things. So the idea that they're going to go, oh man, that was so intriguing. Let me stop engaging with all these things that I just mentioned, so many that I forgot where I was, and go watch the episode. That that's some 2015 behavior. That's some 2015
mm,
shit. That's not where we're at now. And so I believe the best version of this is you think of it like a lead magnet. The best lead magnets solve a narrow problem and reveal a bigger one. The best clip to promote a podcast episode solves a small problem for the audience and makes them aware of a bigger problem that that episode solves.
mm,
That is what I find to be the most effective because it does get people to move off platform more, but more importantly, you don't annoy the people that are there and never leave because they
right.
got a golden nugget right there and they're going to keep scrolling and they just have good association or good, associations for
Mm,
you. Like I could go on and on about it, but I think that the big thing here is always providing value and usefulness in your content will indicate that the bigger piece of content must be valuable, right? Just
mm.
like a free lead magnet that solves a problem indicates that the paid offer is better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so good. I that goes back to what you were saying before, like successful podcasting is about trust. And so if you are and I mean, like, I've been guilty of this where I have because I think there is a place, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been doing this longer, but like I feel like there is a place to, cut it off, right? In the hook to the full podcast, like as like the beginning of the full thing, not as a one single piece of content short
Yes.
as you're scrolling. That's where it does not, so you cannot just repurpose that hook as a trailer. They're two different, there's two different reasons for them, two different purposes.
I agree. And I would argue the more trust you've established, the less that applies. So Diary of a
Mm,
CEO, Stephen Bartlett, has delivered so many incredible interviews for us that we've gotten so much value out of that it's different. But
wow.
like
Yeah.
if I release a podcast tomorrow, I haven't done that at that volume yet. Not
Yeah.
even close. And
Yeah.
so there's less reason for you to believe that it's worth your time.
So good. That is helpful. Yeah, because more than just the followers, right? It is how much trust that podcast, that brand, that person has
Yeah.
actually developed. Okay.
You hear YouTubers say this all the time, and I've never heard anybody on podcasts say this. I guarantee many people have. I'm
Sure.
saying I haven't heard it. But
Yeah.
like YouTube strategists talk all the time about the not as quantifiable metric of like how good was your last video.
Yes.
That actually is one of the best predictors of whether or not somebody's going to click on the new one that you upload. And it's the same in fucking podcasts.
I think I'd love to talk a little bit about brand and branding because I think uh podcasting is a excellent tool for people who are trying to grow a brand. It shocks me that people don't actually have a definition, like that we all don't have the same sort of framework or definition for brand. Like I hear people misuse brand and branding all the time. And so I would love just to hear from you, from your perspective and your experience, like what is a brand? What is branding?
Yeah. I think that elements of branding are what people use to define what it is, right? So,
Mm,
like
okay.
building a logo, establishing a color palette,
Yep.
fonts, those are all part of branding.
Yep.
right? But I think people think that that is what branding is and what brand is. I define branding as an intentional pairing of relevant things. I
Yeah.
think good branding is when you do that consistently. Okay.
Mm.
And I believe those are the actions. That's the verb. And the noun, the byproduct is brand. Brand is when, after you have intentionally paired yourself with those relevant things consistently, that brand occurs when the audience inherently associates you and that thing, right?
Mm.
Like a funny example of this is like, we're at the very beginning stages of putting out content around me, and I've already just beat over the head that like I love Harley Davidsons.
Yes.
And right before hopping onto this, Trevor told me about a post on LinkedIn that we did. And he said that there was like a comment that it's like, it's not content if there's not a Harley or something like that. And I just thought like, wow, it's working, right? Like,
Yep.
that's amazing. They, like, some members of the audience, not many, right? Because like I am nobody, but for some people, they think of a Harley Davidson motorcycle
Yep.
right away when they hear my name or see
Yep.
my face. They
Yep.
assume it's going to be somewhere there. And over time, if we continue to do it correctly, that's something that I want. That's something
Yeah.
that I intentionally want my name to be associated with.
Mm.
And so that's how I see it actually playing out. So I think, when it comes to developing a logo or colors, what you're doing is you're trying to pair your new or unknown brand or company with something potentially familiar in
Yeah.
the color palette, in the way that the font is, in the script and everything like that, that builds an association in the audience's mind.
Mm.
Right? Like there's so much around color theory, right? Like purple being royalty and all these things, right? And ultimately, by choosing a specific color, you are intentionally pairing yourself with a relevant thing. And if it's your color palette and you do this over and over, that's the consistency part, right?
Mm.
And
Yep.
now we're at a point where if you see red and yellow, there's a pretty good chance that it's probably McDonald's,
Right.
right? And like, I'm not saying that every time people see red and yellow, they think McDonald's, but I'd say a pretty good amount. I know for me, I tend to love McDonald's, but like that is an association that I
Yep.
immediately draw. And so I think that it gets misunderstood because people take one of the actions that lead to brand and define it as brand, if that makes sense.
Mm. That's huge. Yeah. No, that is helpful. Um, and it's funny because literally when you said those colors, I was like, it's probably McDonald's, and it was. um,
Funny.
so, okay, the intentional pairing of things that has been such a helpful principle for me. There is, I have friends who are very much in this. Um, I'm gonna call it the self-expression people, right? I make content for self-expression. And then there are uh I would say like one of the things I've heard you really promote, and even in this conversation, you've talked a lot about creating for an audience, right? And so and I think this might go back to the expectation thing, but I kind of want to hear your perspective on
Hmm.
um, those are two different camps, but I
Yeah.
feel like those camps sometimes expect the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think from your perspective, how would somebody, how are, what should those two camps be expecting when it comes to creating content?
Let's start with being on the same page. I
Yeah,
define content as when you make it for them, and I define art as when you make it for you.
love it. Okay, perfect.
Some people think that that is against what like the God says, which is Rick Rubin. Uh, and I don't. I actually think
Mm,
it's exactly in line with what he's saying. I'm not articulating in any way what you should do, art or
yeah,
content.
yeah,
I will tell you, if you give me what you're desired outcome is, what your goal is, I'll tell you exactly which one you should do. But
Mm,
if we're talking self-expression, I view that more in the art lane. And it's not that there's not overlap. Like, there's
yeah.
so much nuance to it. What I just
Yep.
listed was a very black and white definition, right?
Yep.
And it'll immediately trigger a lot of people, understandably so. I would
Sure.
be feeling the same way listening or watching this. Um, but what I would say is that, like, if you are trying to accomplish both, I think most people will accomplish neither. And so what I would say is you need to figure out, what are you trying to do? What is your goal here? Is it a creative outlet for you to express yourself and you do not have any sort of outcome attached that is external? The outcome is internal. Cool. Do all the art you want. Like, for example, when I was on Team Gary and I was learning this, right? And I was going through the phase of learning, like, oh, I shouldn't be trying to make art. I should be making content here because we want this shit to convert.
Yes.
That was hard for me. So in my free time, the little bit that I had, I would make more what I would call, it sounds, I feel like such a, like I'm making big assumptions here by saying I was making art, but I was making things that I would classify as for me. So
Mhm.
according to my definition, I was making art. And I did that on my own free time for fun. I had no expectations of how it would perform or any outcome I would get from it. Right.
Yeah.
Then I went into another season where, in the little bit of free time I had, I was doing a show called Serial, where I would interview. I'm really big into hardcore, metalcore, all that shit. And I would interview different band members while eating a bowl of cereal. That, you could argue, was a little bit for me, for sure, but I had the audience in mind in how I crafted it. I asked
Mm,
questions that weren't boring and obnoxious that every other person asked musicians. Why'd you choose D minor? Nobody gives a fuck about that. We want to
right.
hear, who your favorite, what your favorite Netflix show is or whatever. Like,
Mm,
and so I try to approach it that way. So what I would say is, if you're trying to grow your business,
yeah.
it is less likely that you're going to have success via organic content taking the art approach. The
Yeah.
amount of people that make for themselves and thousands of other people resonate with it is actually very small. There's all these statements out there that, like, if you make it for you, then others will. I The ideological side of me loves that and wants
Right.
to believe that. But the practical, I've been doing this for 16 years, says that happens sometimes, but by observation, more often than not, it does not go that way. You make some shit for yourself and people don't get it or whatever. Or yeah, sure, a small group do, but, like, if you go the content route, you increase the odds that it's going to resonate with more people and cause them to trust you and transact on your offer.
Mm,
And so it depends on your goal. I think art is amazing. And I would never want it to get confused. Like, I'm saying that people should stop making art. Good God, that would
yeah.
suck. Like, my favorite musicians are not the ones that are making the music for me.
Right.
I love the musicians that make it for them. Right.
Yeah.
But for every Ethel Kane, there are millions of people that never hit,
Yeah.
right? Ethel, she's doing some wild shit. Like, there was an album that came out recently. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Mm,
Phenomenal if you've never listened. Like,
okay.
wild. She released an incredibly experimental album in the last year, and it was like, what on earth? I loved it, but I imagine there's a lot of people that have heard it and been like, what the fuck? She hit, but for every one of her, I can think of like 20 homies I went to high school with trying to do the same thing that aren't there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it really depends on what your goal is. Another real quick thing too is the artists out there,
Yeah.
keep making your art. And if you get crazy and get into a season where you want more people to see your art, try making content about your art. Crazy concept.
Ah.
You're not selling
Yes.
out and you're not invalidating your artistry. You're just being smart. Just a little side note.
Wow. That was a gem. I love that. Who is video podcasting for? Like who what are is it content creators? Is it businesses? Who specifically should be doing this medium?
People that want to get more out of what they put in. If you do an audio only podcast, there's far less that you can do with that source material. If
Yeah.
you do a video podcast, you suddenly have the ability to clip moments to then promote the show like we've been talking about. With audio only, you have to do one of those stupid audiograms that all these
Right.
podcast agencies push and nobody gives a fuck about, right? Like,
Yes.
so there's that. Yes, with audio only, you can extract written and come up with, LinkedIn posts, blog posts, articles, shit like that for sure. But with video, you just get more out of it than what you put in. So I would say, number one, anybody that wants that, cool, you should immediately do that. Now, the people that shouldn't do it, and I'm very contrarian, I guess, to the average person in this space. I'm not going to tell you, push through your fears and do a video. Fuck that. That's the quickest way to just not do it. If
Mm,
you're uncomfy being on video, do an audio podcast for the first 6 months. And you'll
mm,
quickly, by observation, not a rule, not everybody
yeah.
falls into this camp, but a lot of people do. They're like, this whole making content thing ain't so bad. Maybe I could do video. And it just warms them up to the idea rather than like, it's the same thing with, I mentioned, I can't remember if it was before or after we started rolling, but I'm currently in the process of trying to get back into shape and lift. And I think if my trainer, I hired a trainer, if he were to be like, all right, we're doing Chris Bumstead's full routine day one, no, I would not
Nope.
stick with him. I actually, I have a powerlifting background, so I'm able to give some input on this. I told him, I was like, I'm going to only go up to 70, 80% effort for the first month on every workout. Because the thing I'm trying to do here is not lose a bunch of weight in the first month. I'm trying to build the habit so I stick with this for a long time. And I think when it comes to content creation, everyone looks at the gangsters in the space and is like, well, I got to do a video podcast, upload 2 reels a day, have a do whatever you're going to be able to actually do to get in the habit, build that habit, and then let's talk about optimizing and all the other levers that you can pull. But the biggest lever that you can pull is just building something that you stick with.
Mm, wow. Wow. That's so helpful. Yeah. Because I just got done. I don't know why I hadn't read it before, but I just read Atomic Habits. And now I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is the thing that people need to uh, really go after is this you have to be consistent. And if you can't be consistent, this is not the medium for you.
Yes.
So, and even I would even say like, especially listening to you, like other pieces of content, like you almost have to say, I am all in on doing this. This is going to be a part of my life that I am creating content. I am podcasting, whatever. This is going to be a dedicated part of my time and I'm just going to do it. If you can't make that commitment, you probably shouldn't dip your toe in the water.
Yeah. And to this point too, um, my mom started a podcast. I told her, don't try to amplify it to other places. Like, you don't need to get listeners right now. You just need to get in the habit of doing it and
Yeah.
comfortable putting yourself out there.
Yeah.
And so, like, for anybody listening, watching that hasn't started but has been debating it, start knowing that all you have to do is record some audio and release it via whatever tool you want to use. And that's it.
Yeah.
Just get in the habit of doing that. And to your point about consistency, I agree. Determine what cadence you can be consistent at. Consistency does not mean a daily, a weekly, a biweekly, a monthly, a quarterly, or yearly cadence.
Yeah.
It means determining what your cadence is and sticking with them, right?
Mm, yeah.
Like, Dan Carlin, Hardcore History, it's not like he was releasing episodes, every week or anything like that. I mean, I remember when I first came across him, I didn't even know what the release schedule was. I don't even think there was one. It was just like when he finished, he would
Yeah.
release, right?
Yeah.
Incredible show. Got a lot of people subscribed and listening. Like, so I think there's a lot of different ways to operationalize consistency.
Thinking about, just trying to build the habit. So you got the people who maybe haven't started a podcast yet, but they're like, all right, I'm going to do this thing. Can you walk me through? Because I mean, you talk about this about building teams. I've heard you talk about, doing things yourself versus freelancers versus all these different things, in-house teams. Can you walk me through how somebody should think about scaling up? So, at what point should somebody maybe take some stuff off of their plate and hire a freelancer, or maybe go to a studio like ours and use us versus like hiring an in house team? Like, what are the phases or the things that would be indicators for them to be like, all right, I'm going to move on to the next thing?
Bottlenecks, problems.
Bottlenecks. Okay.
We hire problem solvers, not butts in seats. Meaning, if you don't have a problem that this role solves, it's not a role to hire.
Mm.
And the way I think about it is like, a lot of people watching and listening to this, they're going to be in different circumstances. But let's just say you're at month number 6 of creating content. You've got your video podcast. You've been doing it for 6 months now. And you're just noticing, you're like, man, I have no shortage of ideas. Like, I got a notes page full of ideas. And I actually don't seem to have an issue recording any of these. Like, I get them all done. But I'm like 10 episodes behind on edit. What do you think we're going to hire? An editor.
An editor. Yep.
Yep. And so that's what you want to do. Like, the easiest way, like, I don't have a playbook on like, here's the exact org chart that your media team needs, because every media team encounters different problems and different bottlenecks that they run into. And so that's what I like to have inform the next hire. I could put together a plan for you, but my plan might not take into account the fact that you love the ideation process and coming up with the ideas. And so you don't want to hire that out. You still want to own that, right? So I think the best thing to do is to look at what are your skills, your deficits, and preferences.
Mm.
List those out and know that you're probably going to want to hire around your deficits. And the things that you love doing, you're probably going to want to hold on to as long as possible. Eventually, you're going to want to delegate that as well. But yeah, you're just hiring to solve those problems. And the beautiful thing about business, content, everything is once you solve one, another one magically appears very quickly.
Right. Exactly.
It's like getting healthy, right? Like
Yeah.
I'll just keep using these examples, but back when I was powerlifting, I started running into some knee problems. My knees were really hurting. And when I went to the chiropractor, he adjusted my back to fix my knees. And the moment that happened, all of a sudden, cool, my knees feel better, but now I'm feeling the pain in my back. And now we got to solve that, right? And then it's hips. And then it'll always, another problem will be revealed. And that is the next hire that you'll need.
But I think that goes again to your point of like, because these are problems that will like, there will be this problem and then this problem and then this problem. That means you do have to hire those problem solvers. So that's huge. You're a systems guy. You are frameworks and principles. So I'd love to know from your perspective, like, so I think about things in terms of production, engagement, and then monetization. Okay. So in terms of the production side, like, what are things that you've seen and the bottlenecks that get in the way of people producing a podcast? Before, you had talked about expectations being something that gets in the way of a successful podcast. But in terms of the actual filming side of things, what are some of the things that you've seen get in the way of people doing that?
Yeah, I think one is ideas, and not lack of ideas, but lack of fleshing ideas out. I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, discount the level of effort it takes to make a good podcast.
Yeah.
And they think like, oh, I got something that I want to talk about and my homie's here. Let's like go riff. And like, by
Right.
all means do that, but don't expect it to do well. Like what I believe a lot of people make the mistake on is not creating a good flow that is empathetic to the listener, right?
Okay.
You want to be thinking about them and how they're going to consume this. And actually, I'll take it a step back because I want to share, I guess, you mentioned you're a systems guy and stuff. A concept I'm learning and working on is what is the difference between process and systems?
Okay. Yeah.
And where I've landed as of July 8th, 2025 at 1:02 PM Pacific time is I believe process is about the individual functions
Mm,
and system is how you collectively group all those individual processes together for one outcome. Okay. And so I think that a lot of people think that their issue is a system problem when maybe they haven't worked and dialed in the individual processes that ladder up to the collective system.
I see.
Meaning, like if you, I'm going to jump to an example that I can speak to a little bit more here, and then we
Yeah.
can dial it back to the individual. If you have a team that's doing this for you, a process that oftentimes in the system falls apart is the individual who is pre-producing the episode, right? They're not the talent on camera. They're not the expert.
Yeah.
They're working on trying to come up with what the expert's going to talk about, but they're not the expert, right? And so what I've observed in these kind of environments is you go to film and the talent's like, what the fuck is this? Like, I would never say this, or this isn't correct, or whatever,
Mm,
right? And I would argue that is a process issue, okay?
got
Potentially
it.
even a people issue.
Yeah.
And so what I think people don't realize is they're misdiagnosing problems in pre-production, production, post-production, and they're trying to solve something that when they solve that, it doesn't solve the issue at hand, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I think
Yeah.
that they are looking in the wrong area. So the most important thing for any piece of content is going to be your idea. The next most important thing is how is that idea communicated? And those are the two things that the majority of people watching or listening are spending the least amount of their time working on. They're working in the production or post-production of it. But I will promise you, Josh, and I'll die on this hill. There's not an edit that can save a bad idea. It just doesn't
I
happen.
agree. Wow. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
win
Yeah.
or lose in the idea. And so I think that, we talked about the expectations thing being the issue. When it comes to pre-production, before you start capturing, the biggest limiting factor is your idea and how
Mm,
you're going to convey that idea.
I
Like
love that. Yeah.
just word vomiting around something
Yep.
worked really well in 2015. It does not work now.
Yeah.
People have higher expectations on how you're going to and what order you're going to convey this information.
That's interesting. I keep thinking about there was a podcast guest that I talked to yesterday, um, that my client brought in, and he basically was like, the standard right now is excellent. You have to be exceptional. And I feel like that's where if you are so focused on the idea, if you are, I mean, that we're trying to get better at, being really good at, titles and thumbnails and
Ooh,
making sure that the concept is there, and making sure that we understand how this will be packaged so people actually click on it and watch it. And so I feel like, yeah, that's some of what uh, this is like. You have to make sure that the idea is so solid. Otherwise, yeah, we've all seen amazing, beautifully shot movies that suck
yeah.
because the concept was terrible. So
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll just give you point blank. The best version of doing a video podcast is before you hit record, you know what the title and thumbnail are, and you map your opening not only 30 seconds, but I would argue your opening 5-10 minutes to reinforce that. Then you can veer into other topics for sure. And I would argue in a podcast, you have more permission to do that than a YouTube video, for example.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure that they the idea is there, it's there, you're building the intro around that so that when they click on it, they are aware that they clicked on the thing that they thought they clicked on. They're
Yes.
getting what they thought they were going to get, right?
Yep.
So like that's going to be the best version for anybody, interview based or solo.
Mm, that's helpful too, because I think sometimes you know, we can, as podcasters, can retroactively, like, kind of tailor the hook, the first 30 seconds, in such a way that yes, it will match the title and the thumbnail and stuff. But I like how you were saying, like, especially the first 5 minutes of actual content, like, make sure you're actually still talking about and delivering on what you said you would in that, because then it goes back to trust, right? Everything is going back to trust. That's awesome. Thinking about engagement,
Hmm.
you you have seen and probably and help so many people think through, uh, not just a piece of content, but there's actually a system. There's an ecosystem around not just one video, but there's it's like around that video, there's things, right? And so
There
I
is.
always think about like the podcast as like a hub, right? It's like the centerpiece, but then there's maybe a newsletter, or all these different things that could go around it. Are there things that you think every single person, if they are if they are doing a podcast and they've already got, maybe that consistency down, whatever that is, maybe they've branched out into the video podcasting part and they are posting every other week, weekly, whatever. You mentioned actually pointing people to something. So maybe that's a landing page, or subscribe to
Come on.
this. And so it's like, well, there's that piece. But like, I know, Alex Hormozi, right? He'll have this free offer for this thing. And so
Mhm.
like, thinking about what are some one, two, three other pieces that not you shouldn't just have a podcast, but to really be successful, it helps to have maybe these one, two, or three other things around it.
I wouldn't think of everything orbiting around the podcast. I think of the podcast as another thing orbiting around your brand. That'd be
Okay,
the first
this
thing.
is key. Yes.
So it's something I found in two lanes, podcasters and LinkedIn nerds. Both have a different level of attachment around the podcast or LinkedIn as like the core thing. I believe it's a tool to amplify the brand that you're building. Okay.
Mm,
Maybe podcasting is your
right.
number one priority and the
Sure.
platform you're getting the most traction on and putting the most effort into, but you should definitely be capturing emails like for a newsletter of some sort. Not necessarily it needs to be paid. Like you can have it be free or whatever. You just want to
Yeah.
be able to actually reach the people that are consuming your content. The best way I have found to do that is have a highly valuable, aka useful lead magnet for them. The best version of that is you make a different lead magnet for each episode that is contextual to what you're talking about.
Mm,
That is final state ideal version, right? Like when you talk about what hosting platform to use, you have a checklist where I answer a couple of questions. And at the end of it, that wouldn't be a checklist, it'd be a quiz, where
mm,
at the end of it, it tells me based on what my inputs were, which platform I should use. And if I enter my email, you'll send me the results. Bang, right? Like
mm.
you want to make them as relevant to the content you're putting out as possible. So that's a big one right there. Um, yeah, I mean, I would say that's the biggest. And if you think about it that way, you're not, again, it depends on what your goals are. So what we're doing is
Yeah.
we're talking about things without the context of like, what is your desired outcome? What are you doing
Yes.
this for? But if you're trying to
Yep.
build a business, then make podcast a way of building and amplifying the business, not necessarily the business. Some people can do that, but for
Yep.
every Chris Williamson, there's many that are not, right?
Yes.
And that man has murdered it. I can also tell you that man works harder than anybody on his
Right.
podcast. Like it's insane. Um, so yeah, I think the ultimate thing is figure out what the fuck you want to have happen because of all of this. Once you know that, that'll inform what platforms you should be on. and what percentage of your time should be allocated to each one. But if you're getting the most traction on your podcast, yeah, continue to double down on that. But then I'd start thinking about like, and what I'm about to say for people that are really in it is going to sound laughable. And for those that, are new to this, it'll sound advanced or whatever. Put your fucking podcast up on YouTube too. Again, for the people that are in it, yeah, duh, we've been doing that forever. But there's a lot of people that are not doing that. And so it's like trying to diversify what platforms you distribute your podcast on is also an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
please capture those emails. But
Mm.
do it in a way like provide more value than what you provided or additional different value than what you did in the episode for a lead magnet on your website for them to get via entering their email.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. Have the podcast, point to the lead magnet, which captures their email, and then continue to provide value in that email, however you decide to engage.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could be
That's
like me
great.
and never send emails, and then I'm sure I'll send one here soon and it'll hopefully be really valuable, but like, or you could do a weekly cadence, either way.
Thinking about this is probably closer to, the content creator side of things, but monetizing podcasts. This is a question we get here all the time. How do I monetize my podcast? And I don't know, are there ways that you think about that or would guide somebody as they're trying to think about how should I monetize my podcast? Are there certain veins that you would be like, you should do this, you should totally stay away from this?
I'm going to give the context that we're going to speak within a vacuum about an ideal scenario,
For sure.
meaning you don't need to monetize your podcast right now in order to pay your bills. I understand there are realities that people will deal with. And so like, if you got to pay your bills, do whatever you got to do. Well,
Yep.
within reason. I did
Right,
not say
right,
literally
exactly.
that, yeah. But you know what I'm saying. If we're not in a position where we need to monetize it right now, I think you wait as long as possible before you ever do that. And secondly, if you're going to do a brand partnership, make sure it's something that's valuable for the audience. As in, if we believe that brand and branding works the way that we described at the top, whatever result they get or feeling or outcome they get from the product that they get that you recommended, they will associate that result with you. So if you shill out a shitty product, they're going to associate you with shitty products. They're not going to be like, oh, Josh was talking about this, but he had no idea. Like, no, they don't go. They're just like, wow, you piece of shit. Like,
Right.
That's how it works. So the other thing too is like, here's a great example. Like there's been a couple of opportunities that have come our way already, which is crazy for brand partnerships. And one of them was a clothing brand. And I liked some of the stuff they had. I like clothes. I like dress in a certain way. And I was like, okay, I would wear that. But then I thought about it. I was like, man, as the first thing, I'm going to push like clothing that doesn't add anything to the audience. What would make sense is like a 1 of 10 or a frame or, Adobe or something like that that would actually add value to our audience.
Yeah.
And so that's what you want to be thinking about with a partnership. The 2.0 version of this is if a brand says this slot to advertising your content is worth X, I will promise you it's worth more. Why would you promote their shit when you could have your own product or service that you sponsor your own content with?
Yeah. Right. That's
That's
good.
the 2.0 version. I know a lot of people are not in that state right now, in that place, but getting there, like I meet with a decent amount of, the majority of people I meet with are in the education space, but I've had the opportunity to meet with a pretty good amount of entertainment-based YouTubers that are all 5 million plus over the last 6 months. And every single one of them, they come to me with their brand partnership strategy. And I'm like, you need to immediately work on your own product. You will get way more in return for that.
Yeah.
And then you can sponsor your own shit.
That's
It's more
good.
organic. It's more organic and authentic anyways. The audience is going to fuck with it more if they've been with you on this journey. Like,
Yeah. No, I think that's huge. Like Yeah, that I mean, I feel like that's a part of the whole ecosystem, right? To think about like as you're thinking about monetizing, like what are the things that you can actually own? But like I think it was helpful what you were saying is again, not everybody's in this position, but the more you can like hold off and kind of put things in place, the better it will be. Kind of going back to kind of what you're pairing yourself with or whatever. This is just kind of a fun sort of question for you, but like why Harley? Like, I know you like it, right? But it also like kind of like you were saying, like it's not content if it's not a heart like has Harley in it. Like, why is that something that you're like for the Caleb Ralston brand? Like, this is something I want to be aligned with.
It's a great question, and I'm going to give you a funny answer. I believe that the AI overlords are going to dominate information, and they will be able to articulate a lot of things better than I can very soon,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. And my competitive advantage is going to be being as fucking human as possible. And
Mm.
so I am literally obsessed with Harleys. Ask my girlfriend. She's the one that knows it the most. All my friends, I have 3 of them in the fucking garage downstairs right now. I just started riding in 2020. Like, it's been 5
Wow.
years and I'm already at this, like, I'm obsessed. Like, it's 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 what I think about all the time. In my free time, I watch videos on builds on YouTube. So I think what I'm trying to do is, and there'll be other areas that I'll start to put out more too and share with the world. I'm just trying to be as me as possible, like
Mm.
to an uncomfy level. There's no real, there's no like very intentional, like crafted strategy behind it. I'm sure that at some point we'll do business with somebody who loves Harleys as well, and that's why
Yeah.
they chose us over some other firm or whatever. But
Yeah.
that's really not why I'm doing it. It's just I just want to be as me as possible. And I think by
Mhm.
doing that, it makes me very unique, right? Like
Yeah.
I did a podcast this morning and I was telling the host, I was telling her like I'm I'm a weird character and I think that it makes it interesting. I'm obsessed with loud, brutal, just gross Harleys, right? Like I like them clean and new, but I like dirty. And then on the flip side, like I will be telling my girlfriend, "Hey, get off your phone tonight. We got to watch Love Island." Like I love both. And
Yeah.
I'm extreme in a lot of different ways. And so I think the more that I share that, everyone has these versions. You have things that you're obsessed with, and then another thing that it's like, this in theory makes no sense,
Right.
except for the fact that it's Josh, right?
Right.
Like for me, I want to share those things because people all day, and I'm watching them do it, and I'm happy that they are, but they'll take what I say and regurgitate it and not give me credit, whatever. That's fine. But what they can't do is be me. I will
Mm.
always be the best Caleb Ralston that there is.
Mm.
Hopefully every year better than the previous one. But like
Right.
that is a game that nobody else can play. And
Right.
I want to play a game that I know I could dominate. And so
Mm.
that's the main reason. Like you'll probably start seeing more around metal and hardcore in my content again. I didn't start with that because that was a little bit more polarizing and would disqualify people from consuming my content more than Harley's, as crazy as that sounds. But like, yeah, I want to share more and more of that. I try to
Mhm.
share about like how I'm getting back into my fitness journey and share some of the ups and the struggles with it. Like all of these things are what make me, in theory, interesting to people potentially.
Yeah.
Actually, let's go a step further on this. When you start, if people that are listening are entrepreneurs, they have their own business, think back to when you had a job somewhere, or even when you were a kid and you started a new school. All you have in common with these people is we work at the same place or we go to the same school. But eventually you start to get comfortable a little bit and you reveal a personal interest. And then you find out that like Sarah or Angelica likes the same thing. And you're like, oh, all of a sudden they go from just being a coworker to what I would call a work homie, right? There's a
Mm.
new level
Yep.
of depth or proximity, back to what we talked about at the beginning,
Yep.
to the relationship. Okay. And it's because you find out that you have common interests. I would
Yeah.
argue that your best friend, you probably have way more interests in common with than somebody that you work with or an employee of yours or a co-founder, whatever,
Mm.
right? And so I call it interest stacking. Whether we love him or we hate him, the example I love to use all the time is Rogan. Joe
Yeah.
Rogan does an incredible job of sharing all these different interests. And some people listen to him only for his fight stuff, only for his comedy, only for his conspiracy theories, only for his human optimization. But the super fans are the ones that like multiples of those. They don't want to hear Joe talk about that. They want to hear Joe talk about anything. And so for me, it's like, how many different interests that I have can I share with the audience? Because I promise you this, all of the people that do brand content strategy that also ride Harleys, they really fuck with me. I see it because we talk.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a different level of depth there, right? And there's not a lot of people that are talking about this shit on a Harley or whatever. So that's why I want to share more of that, right? Like the fact that I love country music to the level that I do. Well, I'm going to connect with a lot more people because of that. Because all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're like, oh, uh, all the people I see talk about this shit, all they use is trap music in their, or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh man. I think that's a very helpful piece because just as people are thinking about their podcast and what they're trying to intentionally pair uh, as they share things and whatever, I think that's huge, especially like I agree with AI. You're going to get information very succinctly in whatever voice you want and all the different things, but they're not going to get the human aspect. And so and that's partly why I love the medium is because I feel like very few people can hide with the camera. Like I'm just not good at it. Like you're hearing all the flubs and the brain farts in as I'm asking questions, right? And it's like it makes us human, and I love it. So,
Yeah.
um,
AI won't lose its train of thought like I have twice in this.
right. So, okay, with as we're coming up to the end of time, I kind of want to just ask two final questions. One is there anything else that we haven't covered? So we've talked about expectations. We've talked about different things about like making sure you have a good idea and you are consistent, and consistency being such a huge thing, making sure that's a habit. What is there anything else we haven't talked about that you've seen that is kind of a across the board principle that will make people successful podcasters, or at least set them up to be successful podcasters that we haven't mentioned yet?
We talked a lot about things that you want to pair yourself with.
Yeah.
We haven't talked at all about what you shouldn't pair yourself with. And it's
Ooh,
just as
yeah.
important.
Okay.
So if you are, and by the way, pairings is not just people. It's
Yeah.
people, it's ideas, it's concepts, it's beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So like, here's a very, very practical example. If you do an interview show, just because somebody is buzzing in your industry and has a lot of attention around them, if they do not hold the same values and ideals as you do, I'm not saying you shouldn't, but it's something to think twice about
Yeah.
in having them on your show. Now,
Yeah.
there are plenty of shows that are based around the idea of talking to people that you disagree with. Okay, cool. That's the whole idea. But knowing that if branding and brand works the way that we have described, then who you have on your show consistently is how your audience will perceive you. If you don't do an interview show and you're a solo person, or it's you and a homie and you're riffing on shit, the topics you cover, just because a topic is trending in culture does not mean it's one that you should talk about. I'll use a controversial subject here, which I don't normally like to do, but I saw a fuckload of entrepreneurs that have no business talking about this. That was a strong statement. I don't believe that they should use their time slots to talk
Mm.
about this. They were talking about the vaccine and whether or not people should be vaccinated or not. And I would talk to them about it. And I was like, are you really passionate around this? Because if you're really passionate around it, fucking talk about it.
Yeah.
But if it's not, they would all say, no, I just know it's going to get good engagement. And I was like, oh my God, how ridiculous. Cool hat, by the way. I just noticed that you're wearing that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
I've seen Chris Do wear that too.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, dude, like I think you want to be very intentional with those things. Like
yeah.
here's a great example. There are so many different videos that I could make around content strategy that are tactical based that would only apply for the next 2 or 3 months, possibly. I hate the idea of doing that. The reason why is because then I get lumped into all of those creators, and there's nothing wrong with them, but the creators that are giving you the tactics of today, but they don't share any principles so that you can determine on your own what tactics you should use. And again, there's nothing wrong with it, but I'm trying to build it differently. So if I made a video on YouTube about 7 hacks I'm using to grow an Instagram account, that is not the kind of pairing that I want to make. And it's not the
Yeah.
association I want the audience to draw upon when they think of me at all.
Mm, yeah,
And so I intentionally, even though I know that video would do well views wise, it wouldn't lead me in the direction I want.
yeah, that's huge. You have to go back to what do you want to be known for and what is going to give value, and yeah, not just clicks. So that's great. All right, this is my last question, a fun one.
These have
What
all
has
been fun.
been good? I mean, it feels like it. The answers have been great. What has been your favorite ride that you've done on your Harley? Like, what's
Ooh.
one that stands out that you're like, this was just so either enjoyable or just fun?
There's a lot. And there's a lot of things that popped up in my head with buddies. But the one that really comes to mind is the first time I did a 1K in a day. It was during a season where uh I was just overwhelmed with so much
Yeah.
in every way imaginable, like personal, professional, everything. And there's this organization, this Instagram page called Ride 1K in a Day. And it's basically you ride 1,000 miles in 24 hours or less. And a buddy of mine, Sebastian, he does it often. And I've seen him do just crazy shit. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And it's a gnarly challenge. Like you could do it in 23 hours and that would be no problem. But like I wanted to do it, in a good amount of time. Like I saw the average, I think was like 18 hours. And I was like, I'd like to try and be under 16. I ended up hitting, I think like 15 hours or 14 and a half hours, something like that. And I enjoyed it so much because it was so hard. I did it in August of 2024, and I remember in August, I hit snow in a pass. I literally was riding up through Montana, and there was a point where it started snowing, and there was like semi trucks on the side of the road, and I'm riding, and it was like a decision of like, am I going to keep going or do I call it quits? And I wanted to hit my time, and I think for anybody who rides, they'll get this. Um, it is exhausting because you're riding the speed limit the whole way, of course. But
Of
because
course.
you're riding the speed limit, you need to be very alert to everything that's going on. And so it's not only physically taxing, it is mentally like I don't think about that much other than the ride when I'm doing a ride like that. If I'm going, joyride, I'll think about other things. But like on that kind of a ride, if I start thinking about anything having to do with work or personal life, I'll crash. I'll get in an
Right.
accident. Somebody's going to swerve in front of me and I need that moment to be able to react. And so I think it was just the reason why it was so enjoyable was it was 15 hours roughly of just being present. And that's why I like
Mm,
riding is I love meditation. I think it's great, but I'm not willing or afraid to admit it. I struggle with really just being present. It's why I can't read physical books well because I'm better at listening. Because if I read all 3 pages in, I'm like, shit, I thought about 20 other things. But
right.
with writing, it's like it forces me to. So
Mm,
this was a trip where I pushed through a lot of struggle, a lot of reasons to call it quits early. And yeah, it was just such a feeling of accomplishment afterwards. And now I'm addicted. I want to do them as often as possible.
love it. Well, dude, Caleb, thank you so much. This was beyond what I was expecting, and you're I just so appreciate your thoughtfulness and you talk about being present. Like I felt very like you were present in this conversation, and I think what you shared is super valuable, not only because of your experience, but even in the way you articulated it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man. Hey, if you're getting any value out of this conversation, would you please like, subscribe, rate, review, share this video, do all the things, and get the word out about this podcast. We are really trying to help podcasters like you, brand builders like you, use video podcasts in the best way possible. Thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust, and we will see you next time.